Oh my gosh, 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 oh my gosh. I am so excited. We are about to read my favorite chapters. This story is about to get so good. I am my own biggest fan. I'm sorry. I'm so excited. Let's do this. Hey guys, welcome to chapter 14 of the Castor Saga. If you're new here, I have a whole playlist of about 13 chapters before this, including the prologue, as well as the official book trailer. This is the Castor Saga, chapter 14. You have been warned. Spoiler alert. That being said, this chapter is one of my favorite chapters because Meli is about to get so much more complex. And it's time to decide, do you like her or do you hate her? Do you trust her or are you suspicious? Let's get into it. Chapter 14, The Forest of Mists. They finally found their way into the actual forest, and things began to get stranger as they walked into the trees following the tracks. Most people would have thought this forest would be easy, considering they already made it through the Forest of Darkness. But the minor differences were what made this forest so much worse. In the Forest of Darkness, nothing tries to kill you. It's simply sensory overload and meant to drive you insane. But in this forest, the danger's more severe, and the mental breakdowns are what may finally put you out. You can see the mist and the fog, but nothing past it. You can see the shapes of creatures that want to kill and eat you, but they're too blurry to identify. They hadn't seen anything yet that wanted to kill them, but that was when they started hearing a voice that seemed to be calling out to Meli. It was the voice of the creature, the Shadow Man, that Tony had seen following them, and his name was Zane.
Melissa.
Huh? What was that?
Melissa. Who's there?
It was quiet for a moment, and then,
Melissa!
Ah! Meli covered her ears as they all looked around her. Leave her alone! They all ran down the tracks a ways, but they stopped when they saw a dark figure standing on the tracks. It was Zane. He stood in front of them at 6'2", and his deep brown mahogany-colored eyes watched them closely from under his thick black hair.
Who are you?
My name is Zane. I'm here to take Melissa.
Zane? Over my dead body. If that's how you want it.
No! We're almost done with the trials. Can't you wait to terrorize me until after? No. I was told to come get you before you finish the trials.
What? Why?
Because she cannot be allowed to finish the trials. She's too powerful. If she finishes the trials, then she'll go on record. We don't want her on record. Why? Because you want to keep her power for yourself? Because you want to kill and eat her? Zane looked confused and hurt by Tony's accusations. No. We want her to come home. She's one of us. We want her back. Zane suddenly got an annoyed and irritated look as the sky around them began to get clouded, and the ground beneath them began to shake. And I will take her back. You will not stop me. Zane put his hands together, then shot what appeared to be a large lightning bolt at Tony. Meli jumped between them and shouted loudly, "Behind me!" She put up her hands, blocking the bolt and shooting it upwards back into the sky. She stood between Zane and the others as he paced back and forth, enraged with her interference.
You.
He pointed at Meli, then stepped to the side, pointing at Tony and the others.
You all have interfered. Now that you know of her, I cannot allow you to just walk away. Stand aside, Melissa.
You can't beat me and you know it, so leave before you make me angry.
I will not tolerate this disobedience.
Disobedience? You're being disobedient to me! That's when Tony and the others realized it. Meli knew exactly who this man was. She'd known all along. Why didn't she tell them? Or even more important, why didn't she stop him? Meli's eyes lit up white, and as they did, Zane's eyes lit up yellow. You followed me through the trials, tormented me and my friends, and now you want to ruin my whole trip by not even letting me finish the damn trials? How dare you! There is a point to this, sister. You have a choice to make. Rule number 15, I believe it is. The past doesn't impact the future, but everything is a choice. You always have a choice. So choose wisely. Tony looked at Meli, hearing Zane talk about rule number 15. It startled him slightly that this man could know so much more about Meli than they did, and he wondered if it was all true. Why did Zane call Meli sister? Was Meli really one of them? Was she like Zane? And if so, did that mean that Meli was one of these creatures meant to kill Castors that supposedly lived in the Forest of Golden Rain? Was she even human? All these questions flooded Tony's mind, but Meli was protecting them from Zane, so for the moment,
He'd push his questions to the back of his mind. They had more important things to think about at the moment. Tony stepped up beside Meli and spoke quietly to her. "Meli, is that really Rule 15? She took a deep breath and sighed as she glanced sideways at him, then smirked and looked back toward Zane as she spoke. "Yes, Tony, it is. So I guess I better make my choice then, huh?" Meli stepped out toward Zane and glared at him as she took a fighting stance against him. "You want me back? Fine, I'll come back. But not before I finish the trials with my new friends. I won't go now without a fight." Zane got a wicked grin on his face. "Then so be it." Zane pulled lightning down around them, and it struck down around Meli and her friends. Rose stumbled sideways, almost getting hit by it. "Meli!" Meli made a small tornado shape and sucked all of her friends inside it with her. She stood between them and Zane, as he walked over closer to them and then reached inside the tornado, grabbing Meli by the neck and yanking her out. Zane threw her away from the others, and the tornado shrunk down and disappeared. "You may be able to resist me." He looked at Tony and the others with a terrifying grin. "But they can't." Meli's wide eyes suddenly flashed bright like the sun. Then she vanished, and reappeared in front of her friends as the ground around them shook like an earthquake. "No, you are not going to hurt my friends. I won't let you. I've already lost too many people to the trials, and I refuse to let you take them too." Meli put her hands together and began mumbling words under her breath. Each word was slightly louder than the last. She was pissed, and everyone could tell now. Her hair frizzed up as electricity started popping off and sparking off her body. "Donti e rolla derake quadoka." A spiraling twister that appeared to be made of black clouds and lightning came down suddenly and slammed down hard on top of Zane. It was big enough to throw the others around, but Meli was standing strong and unaffected by the massive winds. Tony grabbed onto Meli's arm, and she looked at him as he smiled at her. "I think you got him. You want to calm the storm?" Meli smiled as her eyes dimmed out. Her hair fell flat, and the black tornado tapered off as the black fog dissipated. The wind had pulled the mist and fog from the forest into the tornado, and now they could see quite a ways around them. There was nothing, though. Dead logs and some stumps, but no trees. It was a barren wasteland. Meli calmed herself, then looked up at Tony with a small half-smile lining her perked-up lips. "I am the storm." He smiled, and everyone gathered close with questions. But before they could ask, they heard a chuckle from the dark, dissipating tornado. Then Zane stepped out of it. His hair was every which way, and he was a little dizzy, but he stood alive and uncut, across from them on the tracks. He kind of shook himself, then looked at Meli slightly hurt. "Whoa, you're serious. You were trying to hurt me. That's rude. I see you've gained quite a bit of control over yourself, though. That's good." He dusted off his arms and looked at Meli with a slight smile. He looked proud of what she'd done to him, but Meli glared back at him, annoyed with his bantering. "What? You're not even going to talk to me?" She just continued to glare at him as he stood there looking back at them. Finally, a relaxed smile made its way onto his face, and he crossed his arms standing there. "Fine. If you're going to play rough, I haven't been able to beat you since you came of age. I'm aware of it. I'll go get someone else who can. Guess I'll have to make this up to you somehow. Go finish your damn trials. But I'll be waiting, sister." Zane made a motion with his hand towards the sky, and a bolt of lightning came down striking him as he vanished along with the storm clouds. Everyone was quiet, but then Meli turned around and looked at them, and most of them were smiling at her. Nervously, but they were smiling. "I think you got some more explaining to do there, Meli." "So, you're not mad?" "Well, that depends. Were you planning on killing us in the final forest?" The others looked at Tony, confused by why he had said that. After all, they knew nothing about the creatures from the Forest of Golden Rain, and Meli preferred to keep it that way. "No, I'm trying to get you all out of here alive if you haven't noticed." "Well then, I think some answers are owed, but besides that, I think we're good." "So, who was that guy? And who are you, Meli?" Meli smiled as they all continued walking the tracks, slowly, and she talked as they wandered back into the fog. "I am from a very special place. It's a secret place that nobody really knows about, and no one could ever really find it without being taken there by someone like me who lives there. It's located in the heart of the Forest of Golden Rain. We call it Nahamo. I'm from Nahamo." "Nahamo?" Rose suddenly looked absolutely terrified by that, and walked at the back of the group as the others stayed closely gathered around Meli, and Tony, who was beside her. She recognized that word, and it scared her more than anything she had seen in the forest trials. And rightfully so. Nahamo's had a reputation with other casters. What exactly is that, Meli? It's just the name of my home and culture. My family's lived there for, well, it's too long to count, but many generations. So, Nahamo is the name. Sort of. It's what we call it. Nahamo actually means the peaceful place, or the peaceful people. What language is that, Meli? My language. It's Nahamic. It makes spells and castings more powerful in the hands of someone who can learn the language properly. It's the language used on the train track tickets too, actually. You know, when you board the train. They all nodded, beginning to understand more and more as she explained. The Nahamics were the family who originally built the train tracks to the sea, and set up the trials through each forest. They were the original Castor family, who started all the traditions, and it was their power alone that used to allow the train to function. But one day the family disappeared into one of the forests, and they were never seen again. That is, until now. I heard you chant something before that tornado came down on that Zane guy. Was that Nahamo? Well, Nahamic. Yes. Nahamo is my culture. Nahamic is my language. Who all lives with you and has learned Nahamic, Meli? Well, me and Zane, among others. So then he called you sister. Is he your brother? Yes, he's my stepbrother. I'm the only girl of this generation. My mother and her sister were the only girls of their generation, and before them it was my grandma. Girls are very uncommon in Nahamo. There's quite a few boys, though. How many, Meli? Well, let's see. If I were to count, this generation had... Meli counted on her fingers and in her head quietly, then smiled at them. Counting myself, we have 5 births, and then 4 inducted siblings. Inducted siblings? Yeah, it's pretty common for my brothers and I to make friends outside of Nahamo and invite them back to be a part of our family. We help them learn about their abilities, but so far this generation has only had 4 casters who we've inducted. There is a catch, though. What's the catch? When everyone's grown, they can't just take off. We're a family. We watch out for each other. And we also try to use our abilities to fix problems around the world. You know, without anyone noticing. So, it's a cult.
Eej!
What's a cult?
Kidding! I was kidding.
Meli rolled her eyes and looked at Tony as he spoke to her.
So that's why they want you back. 'Cause you were never supposed to leave.
Yeah. My family and I are very powerful casters, maybe even some of the most powerful ever seen. If someone got a hold of me, they could do some real damage. That's why they want me home, where I'm safe with them. Well, we won't let them take you, Meli.
Yeah, I'm sure if we all worked together.
Guys, that's sweet, but I have to go. My brothers are good people, but they live by strict Nahamo rule. Death is not a concept of pain to us. I don't want them to hurt anyone. Meli, you can't go. Not now, at least. You're our friend. I'll see what I can do.
No!
Tony turned her away from everyone else and spoke quietly so only she would hear him.
Meli, you're my partner.
I won't let you go alone. You're the only reason I'm here in the first place. If you go, I go. We clear? Meli smiled at him and hugged him tightly. He hugged her back and smiled down at her as she looked up at him with a childish wonder in her eyes. Thank you, Tony. Tony nodded, and then they looked back at everyone. Some of them may have been scared of her, but he wasn't. He understood now. Meli was a creature of the forest, but only by default. Only because she lived there. She was as human as the rest of them. She was just from a family that lived there every moment in the world of casters, not Normos, not humans. They were the reason the train tracks to the sea existed. They were its guardians, and there was nothing wrong with that. They were misunderstood, and Tony could relate to that. They all started walking as Tony and Luke walked beside Meli. So, Meli, if it's all a large brotherhood, who all's out there? Do you have any actual siblings, like by blood? Yeah, 2 actually. Remember I said counting me, my generation had 5 births? Well, 2 of those were my older brothers, and the other was my older cousin.
What about the 5th? You said you're the 4th?
Well, the 5th would be Zane. He's older than me, too. I'm the youngest of all of them, which is kind of annoying, actually.
Rose spoke quietly from the back, trying not to draw too much attention to herself. But she seemed as if she wanted to know more.
And they're all boys? Yeah, I grew up with all older brothers.
John, Keith, and Ej all laughed. Oh, so that's why you fight so well.
Huh?
You wanted to keep up with the boys, right?
Yeah, that. And it was either learn how to fight or get held down and drooled on.
The boys all laughed, but Rose got a grossed out look on her face.
Ew. Meli laughed along as they kept walking down the tracks. I'm kidding. They'd never do that. They're actually rather sweet to me for the most part. So, Mels, Zane said he was going to bring back someone else who could beat you. Who do you think he's bringing? I don't know. Maybe my cousin or one of my blood brothers. Whoever he brings. I don't think there'll be a problem as long as I'm cooperative.
Meli, Zane appeared to be a caster like you. A storm caster? Is that the case, or is he just trying to scare us?
Yeah, 'cause mission accomplished. Oh, I'm sure he was just trying to scare you. But the lightning is 'cause he's a mimic shadow caster. He's my twin spark. Your twin spark? Is he your twin brother? No, stepbrother, remember? We don't share any blood, but that's got nothing to do with it. A twin spark is someone whose abilities mirror your own, so while Zane may not be as strong as me, his abilities are very like mine. Do we all have a twin spark? Yeah, supposedly. We have twin sparks, and then we have casting partners, and then blood siblings, and eventually a couple's bond at some point. A twin spark is just another bond that's not quite as strong as the other main three. How do you know who your twin spark is? When you fight them and match them in a fight with the same abilities they're using. I can see now why they want you home. You're a part of them. Yeah, well, now she's a part of us. Meli smiled at that, but then her smile vanished. Thank you, but... Well, that may be one reason why they want me back. The main reason is probably just because I'm unstable. Unstable? Yeah. While I've gotten better at controlling my abilities, most stormcasters are unstable. Zane isn't a stormcaster. He's just a mimic and can mimic my abilities. He's a shadowcaster, and therefore he is very, very controlled in every little casting that he does and uses. I, on the other hand, am a full-blown stormcaster, so I'm slightly unstable. How can a shadowcaster use stormcaster abilities as well? He's a mimic caster. He taught himself. He wanted to beat me. He was driven and passionate, but while he's never actually beat me, and probably never will, he has matched me before. Strange. Yeah, I know. We should probably refocus our attention, guys. I think I just saw something ahead of us. They walked forward, continuing towards the end of the tracks, as giant birds above them began coming down and lifting people up. Tony, Meli, and Luke all used whip-like strings of their individual energy to whip at the birds and scare them away. More beasts began to appear, but they fought them off like the others. Large centaur creatures appeared, with swords, swinging them at the young casters as they ducked, and used small attacks to shoo them away. It wasn't as hard as they thought it would be. Meli's little test she ran on them earlier definitely helped prepare them, though. Honestly, Meli's tests were harder than this was. They assumed because of all the ruckus earlier that many of the beasts were scared off. The fog and mist was gone, and they were all excited to step out off the tracks and be welcomed into the Garden of Lily.
Can you believe it, John? We're almost there.
I know. Am I the only one who's kind of nervous for it all to end? Like, we kind of knew what to expect in each forest, but now we have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, plus we might lose Meli.
Luke leaned over by Keith and Ege and whispered quietly. We have to defend Meli. She left that place because she wanted to. We can't let them take her back if she doesn't want to go. What do you say, guys? I'm in. Yeah, same. Luke nodded, then looked at Tony, who had apparently heard them talking. Tony nodded as well, then walked up closer to Meli. Luke looked back at John and Rose and smiled. You two stay together now. Rose and John nodded, and smiled, glancing down at their tied wrists. Then they all looked forward at Meli. A creature came forward at her, and she snapped as if it were nothing, and the creature just vanished from their path. Tony came up by her, and smiled, walking beside her. I'll bet this was entirely too easy for you, wasn't it? I mean, yeah, but it was still fun nonetheless, and I got to meet you. Tony blushed and nodded in agreement. Yeah, I'd say meeting you was definitely the best part. But you're Nahamik. Yeah, didn't your ancestors, practically build these tracks? Not practically. We did. The people of Nahamo created the tracks and the trials to protect true blood-born casters from prosecution. And still, we protect it, just from a distance. It is one of my people's most sacred creations. One of? What's their most sacred creation? Meli paused and looked ahead. She was going to ignore the question, but then smirked and spoke one word, then walking off a bit ahead of them. Me. Tony ran up beside her and snagged her hand in his. You are just full of endless surprises, aren't you? I guess so, yeah. Tony nudged her arm and smiled as she grinned back at him, rolling her eyes. You ready to see the Garden of Lily? Yes, but Meli, I'm wondering something. Yeah? I don't know what made me think of this, but you say you're brothers and the Nahama people. They're good guys, right? Like, they help people and protect the forest and stop disasters around the world, right? Right, and? Well, if they're the good guys, and they're the ones who want to protect people, who are the people at the Garden of Lily and what do they do? Well, Tony, that's what we're going to find out. I do know one thing, though. Meli glanced over her shoulder at the others with a serious look on her face. Don't tell anyone anything about me or my brothers. They'll realize a Nahamik helped you and count your trials as invalid. Invalid? What? Why? Your people created this place. If anything, our trials are more valid because you helped us and approved of our journey. I know, but the people who currently run the Garden of Lily have walked away from our old Nahamik traditions. They're more about control and organization, and my family believes in the beauty of chaos, which lives within the human Castor's soul. Just take my word for it, okay? Don't say anything. It's for your own good. They nodded, and then they slowly approached the gate between the Garden of Lily and the Forest of Mists. So then, these Garden of Lily people might not be the nicest people like we've been told? Rose's question was baiting Meli. Meli didn't know why, but for some reason, Rose's question seemed less than genuine. Rose's expression looked as if she were up to something, but Meli ignored it, not thinking anything about it. No, I never said that. We just don't know exactly what they want us to do. I always thought they were going to teach us to be healers. Yeah, same. Well, they might. Just keep a healthy skepticism as with anything, okay? They all nodded as they approached the gate and stepped into the final safe zone. Meli started to get a weird feeling as they did, though. She stopped and looked back at everyone as they stood on the tracks. Guys, we don't know what's on the other side of this gate. Yeah? What's your point, Meli? I just wanted to say thank you for being my friends. What do you mean, Melissa? Just, we don't know what will happen now, so thank you for being my friends on the trip over here. They all looked around and smiled at each other. Then Rose walked over and tried to smile at her. You're a good person, Meli. No matter what happens, we'll always remember this. I'll always remember this. I will too. Rose smiled as she stepped back. Then they all took a deep breath, stepping towards the gate. Hey guys, if we're going to do this, we may as well do it in style, right? Tony pulled out his music player, and John pulled out his speaker, as they plugged them in and turned them up as loud as they could. A happy, familiar song played as they all took a deep breath and began walking again. Everyone would recognize this song. John looked at Tony with a skeptical look. Really, Tony? Hey, if there's two things I know for certain in this world, it's that 1, Meli is the only reason we made it through these trials alive. And 2, if you say you don't like this song, you're lying. They all laughed as they stepped from the forest, walking out into the open. Suddenly, everything was in slow motion. Meli glanced out of the corner of her eye at Tony, whom was smiling at her. They were in normal motion, as everything else around them slowed down. We did it, Meli. Tony, how are you doing that? I think I found my talent, Meli. I'll explain later. Meli smiled as they sped back up to normal time, and they walked over to the gate at the end of the tracks. They saw that the tracks ended, and they knew as soon as they stepped off the tracks that they would be on the cliffs above the ocean on the Oregon coast, in a large open field that they'd known for so long to be the Garden of Lily. They all took a deep breath and paused at the gate. Ready? They all nodded, and she smiled back at them. All right. 1, 2, 3. And that concludes Chapter 14. Thank you very much for listening. If you haven't already, subscribe below. The next chapter is going to be amazing and is coming very soon. At least for me. You're about to meet my favorite characters, so spoiler alert. That being said, until next time, love you very much. Bye.